Benvingudes i benvinguts al...
Welcome, everybody, to day 2 of the Time Use Week. We have a day full of talks, which I expect will be equally interesting. I'll just briefly outline what to expect for today, and we'll open the floor for the first session. We're going to have a bit of a change of tack. This session is titled Time Policies, Normativity and Diversity in Culture. We're going to have a philosophical and different perspective on time to help us imagine the different things, which is sometimes a good thing. Next, we have a session on data on time uses in order to develop innovative policies. After that, we'll have a coffee break. Then we'll have the General Assembly of the Local and Regional Governments Time Network. In parallel, for researchers based in Catalonia, there will be another session in a separate room to discuss time use, the time use survey we will shortly have here in Catalonia. Then we'll have lunch, and we'd like to encourage you to stay on after lunch for an in-depth workshop on how to design time policies from a cross-cutting perspective. We will finish that at 3:30. Without further ado, we hope you will enjoy today, and I'd like to introduce Xavier Vassas, the first speaker this morning. He's a philosopher. He teaches at the University of Barcelona, and he belongs to the Institute of Suspended Time.
Bon dia. Se sent bé?
Good morning. Can you hear me? Good morning, everybody. And thank you for coming. I would like, of course, to begin by thanking the organizers for their initiative, Marta Junque in particular, since she invited me, but also Ariadna, Silvia, and Mark, the organizing team, who have made it possible for me to be here and to share with you my considerations. This presentation will be about 45 minutes long, but I hope it will open you up to other times beyond minutes and hours. And I hope that the syntagm, the right to time, that has brought us here together, the phrase right to time, will actually acquire a deeper meaning for you. I'm Xavier Vassa. I'm in the Institute of French Thought, and I'm together with Raquel Friera, who was unable to join us here today. I am the co-founder of the Institute of Suspended Time, which is sort of at the convergence of politics and philosophy and others. I'll briefly tell you about the Institute later on. Last week, we were also invited to the Time Use Week. The Institute of Suspended Time, this project that involves art and philosophy, had a short exhibition on times, the politics of time, literature, art, whatever, and we also provided two advisory services, to consulting or counseling services or therapy services. There's therapy and there's counseling on all sorts of aspects. We provided counseling on time. So we listened to people discussing time. So a bit like an agony aunt, but in the case of time, dealing with time. So we talked to people. We were there for 3 days, I believe it was 3 days, and we identified an issue. Most of the people attending the Time Use Week were people who worked for government, people in public service, and people who were committed to the right to time, which is a crucial right today, as we know now. However, most of them were not aware of the work being done on the right to time and new policies on time in literature, philosophy, and contemporary art. And that's why this year, what we proposed to Marta was that she might provide us with this time slot so that we could summarize for you what has been done over the past, say, 50 years in political philosophy, in literature, and contemporary art around the issue of time. We have 30 or 40 works shown here regarding time. Most of the participants last year were not aware of them. People in public service should be aware of the politics of time from the perspective of culture, philosophy, literature, art, etc. And that is why what I'm offering you today is a series of quotations, a series of considerations based on written books that I hope will help you go deeper into the work being done in the Time Use Week by leveraging quotations from literature and art and the like. So all these quotes that I wanted to share with you in hopes of helping you go deeper into your task on philosophy of time. The political philosophy, three headings, political philosophy, literature, and philosophy. Let's start with critical thinking and political philosophy. I have titled this Denaturing Time, Politicizing Life. There is a French philosopher, Jacques Rancière, who wrote in 1981, The Night of the Proletarians, translated into Spanish in 2010 by Tinta Limon. All of my quotes are in Spanish because there is no Catalan translation for any of my quotes except for Marcel Proust. So all of the quotes I'm providing are Spanish translations. This Jacques Rancière book was published in 1980, and he tried to politicize time in life. He tried to convey the idea that if emancipation is possible, in his case, emancipation of proletarians, and in our case, emancipation of citizens from precariousness, emancipation should go via the recovery of stolen time, because currently we are undergoing a radical and cruel expropriation of time in our life. And that is the basis of the right to time. Jacques Rancière said, and I quote, "The Night of Proletarians. This title shall not express a metaphor. The point here is not to remember the pain of slaves, the terrible, dreadful hovels, the brutality of bodies. We can apply this to current precariousness. We will not deal with this except through the look of the word, the reason, and the dreams of the characters in this book, who they are. Who are they? They are a few hundred proletarians who were in their 20s around 1830. That was the beginning of the industrial exploitation in France. At the time, they had each individually decided not to continue bearing the unbearable, which was not exactly terrible poverty, low wages, and very uncomfortable housing or hunger being there, but rather the fundamental pain of stolen time. And that is exactly the way we experience it. We all experience the pain of stolen time. So the pain of time stolen every day to work on timber or iron, to sew or to make shoes, with the only purpose of maintaining indefinitely the force of servitude, because we are subjected to the politics of this, as well not just servitude but also domination, the absurd humiliation of having to beg every day for that work where you lose your life. Then the weight of the others as well, those working at the workshop, showing themselves off as a cabaret Hercules, or the obsequiousness of good workers, hard workers outside waiting for a job that they would be happy to take from them. So this is a description taken from Jacques Rancière, and he describes how the exploitation of the past is the precariousness of the present, and it's all about stealing life, stealing time and life, which is stolen by the productivist system in which we live. The system in which we live is based on stealing people's time. And therefore, that is why we need the right to time. So what can we do about this? Here's another quote from the same book, which describes how these proletarians, male and female, achieved emancipation, how they reappropriated this expropriated, stolen time. The emancipation of workers in 1830 also provides a model that could help us today reclaim our time. So the idea is to carry out a series of emancipatory activities, activities that are not there in our agendas, activities that require some time but are not planned for in our temporal identity, our socio-employment identity. We belong to a social class, we belong to an employment sector, but we also have a temporal identity. Some people enjoy time more than others. So they might enjoy their work more than others. They might enjoy their time more than others. There's also such a thing as socio-temporal identity. Depending on where you are in the social and economic and time pyramid, you may enjoy your time more or less. And so we're used to the standard pyramid where the people at the top are the ones with the highest income and the ones at the bottom are the ones who have more precarious livings. Well, the same applies to time. At the top you have the people who have the most time, at the bottom the ones who have the least. What proletarians did at the time was to emerge from monochrony. That's another important concept in political philosophy. Emerge from the monochrony that the time-related philosophy was assigning them to. So workers, and many of us, are subject to the monochrony of working, and then maybe in the evening or at night, maybe a little bit of leisure, perhaps a sitcom, perhaps a little chatting with family or friends, and then go to bed, go to sleep, because you have to work the following day. So it's all about working and resting. That's our monochrony. And our resting is not enjoyment. It's, as people often say, it's about recharging your batteries so you can work harder the next day. That's what people say in September, don't they? You know, oh, we've recharged our batteries so we can really go for it now in September. So resting time is not about just resting, it's about recharging your batteries. So you're still within the productivist economy. The only time emancipation activities possible are the ones mentioned in this second quote. The proletarians would get up earlier to watch the sunrise. It wasn't ideal for them because they had to go work in a factory in tough conditions. Or else they would gather at night to write diaries or write poems. That is an enjoyment of time. That is an activity that is not assigned to you in your agenda or in your socio-temporal identity. It's the only way to emancipate oneself from monochrony. And that was how they they broke with monochrony. Proletarians were not supposed to write poems. They didn't have time to write diaries. They didn't have time to get up and watch the sunrise. But they made the effort to do it. It was the only way to be emancipated from their socio-temporal identity. So everyone now consider which emancipatory activities are the ones that are not provided for in your socio-temporal identity. Another reference, also within political philosophy, this looks in further depth at monochrony, monochronos, a single time. I have some books here. This is from a book called 24/7, and it discusses how the succession of work and rest, day and night, holidays and work, working days and weekdays and weekends is something you can't get out of. And in fact, there's a concept that's even more homogeneous, 24/7. 24/7, you are a producer within your time, your life. So, page 65. The omnipresence of 24/7 environments is one of the conditions for this flattening, homogenization of time. But 24/7 is not meant to be understood only as a homogeneous, unpleasant time, but also as an incapacitated, decrepit diachrony. There are differentiated times, apparently. Today is a working day, today is a holiday, today I'm working from 4 to 6 only. There are temporalities that are differentiated, but the range and depth of their distinction is becoming diminished. The older units, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, subsist, but they are superimposed with other practices in time management that are made possible thanks to the networks and markets operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The digital world and the internet has obviously made it even more possible to live our lives 24/7. 24/7. That is a fact. So we need to be clear on that when we talk about the time of technology, which also bears discussing. So this flattening mentioned in the book 24/7 is linked to sleep. Sleep is the last bastion, the last fortress, the last holdout of time against homogenized monochrony. So the point here is not to sleep well or to sleep more. Yes, we do need to sleep more. We need to sleep well. If you go to a pharmacy nowadays, one of the sections that is always very visible and that is number 1 or number 2 in the anti-aging concept is capsules that will help you sleep at all or sleep better. If you go to a pharmacy, it's quite clear. Anti-aging is one big section, and then better sleep is another. And then, of course, you have tranquilizers. But in any case, the point is not. The point is to sleep better or sleep more, so you can recharge your batteries. That's not the point, according to Crary. The point is to understand that sleep determines time in your life. Sleep is the last biological bastion holding out against the productivist monochrony of 24/7. So sleep is a political act. Yeah, you might smile, but it is. Sleep as a political act, not only to recover your strength and work better, but by opposition to productivist time and to machine time. There's a difference between technique and technology. Technique is a hammer. You use it. But technology creates a new world and you get inside it. We are living in the world of technology. We live within its world and its temporality. And so sleep, as Crary tells us, is the last bastion holding out against this monochrony that we are all being subject to. And so sleep is about acceleration. Hartmut Rosa and Paul Virilio talk about acceleration. Hartmut Rosa, remedies for acceleration. Paul Virilio, the speed of acceleration. What he says is that democracies are not democracies but democracies. It's the power is to the fastest. It was also that way in ancient times. It was those who walked versus those who rode a horse. And now it's the same, 4G versus 5G. So instead of talking about democracy, we should talk about dromocracy. Drome is a Greek verb that refers to running, and so dromocracy is about the power of the sense of speed. Then we have sleep, Jonathan Crary, but there's also another tiny, funny book, a book that is well known in Catalonia and in Spain. El don de la siesta, the gift of the siesta, the gift of the nap. This book talks about naps, about napping as a way to respond to this machinic productivist time. Then we'll go to systemic time, chrononormativity. This is one of our battlegrounds, one of our top items on the agenda at the Institute of Suspended Time. So currently everything is based on expropriating time in our lives. There are acts of expropriation. We can depart from our socio-temporal identity to get out of the monochrony of holidays and work and rest time and work time, and also to get out of the 24/7 dynamic. The thing is, the 24/7 dynamic becomes the norm. It becomes the system. That's what we call chrononormativity. In today's world, we've all heard of heteronormativity, right? Well, I think words like chrononormativity should become a buzzword as well. People talk about other kinds of normativity, but they don't talk about chrononormativity. We at the Institute of Suspended Time have the job of trying to introduce these words into the vocabulary. Are you chrononormative? What does it mean to be chrononormative? If this word is brought into the vocabulary, then we'll have another tool to deal with people who is always stressed out in order to work harder or to go faster in every sphere in life. You can tell them, hey, don't be so chrononormative. So this word would be another tool for the struggle. And then we could also talk about chronodelinquents. We have a project which is a chronotemporal code about good and bad time practices. And so by introducing these words, we could be doing the symbolic word, the cross-cutting work done by feminism, for instance. We would be changing mindsets. Elizabeth Friedman, in Time Binds Queer Temporalities, tells us what chrononormativity is. It's this normative way of defining ways of experiencing time. She says, chrononormativity is a mode of implementation, a technique whereby institutional forces come to appear to be somatic events. In other words, the alternating 5 days of work, 2 days off, 11 months of work and 1 month of holidays, that it's become normalized. But all of these are imposed by institutions and by power. This is chrononormativity. the natural being, somatic being, or we are, or rather, it is the fact that things that actually have a socio-political basis become or appear to become somatic, appear to become some part and parcel of our body. So timetables, calendars, time zones, and even wristwatches are imbuing what the sociologist Evitar Zerubbabel calls hidden rhythms, ways of experiencing time that appear to be natural for those whom they benefit. Manipulations of time turn specific regimes of asymmetrical power into body routines and tempos that appear to be ordinary and in turn organize the value and meaning of time. We at the Institute of Suspended Time develop the idea of chrononormativity because we realize that any society, in order to establish itself as a society, needs some kind of time regime or time scheme. That was a fact in ancient times, and it is a fact now. Chrononormativity is needed for society. Society needs chrononormativity. There are certain rhythms in time that need to become normalized. And of course, chrononormativity evolves over time. It was one thing for the Greeks and the Romans, and it was another in the Middle Ages in Europe. It was another, well, in the classic period. It was another in the industrial era, and it is different now in the digital era. Chrononormativity can change. Time schemes can change, but there always has to be some kind of time scheme. Otherwise, you don't have a society. A better society would be one that would be aware of the fact that a time scheme is necessary, but is not natural.
So we work on denaturalization. Now that would be to realize that we do need certain time schemes in order to all agree, but that's something that's imposed on us by power. But we need to know that these are not natural schemes. And if we realize that they're not natural schemes, then we know we can change them. How often do we find ourselves dehumanized, such as what we see now? So if we work on chrononormality, that is what we're looking for. We have to reflect upon sociology, on the dehumanization, and then be open to changes. If you're denaturalized, things are not natural. So it's not just something you have to put up with, like we say in Catalonia, that is what there is. You have to put up with it. No, this is just one specific scheme. It's not natural. Therefore, we can change it. So we need chrononormativity. Do we need time schemes? Yes, we do, but we do not need to naturalize them. So when we're confronted with chrononormativity, we are also trying to foster another word which should come into our everyday speech, which is chronodiversity. We've spoken a lot about functional diversity, cultural diversity, but why do we not talk about chronodiversity? Each and every one of us live in different times, don't we? This is key. We have different rhythms, not just according to a gender or social class, but also individually. So if we take that into account and we have chrononormativity and chromodiversity on the other hand, we can be open to other times. Science and quantum physics is the tool that we have today. From all the knowledge that we have, it is the strongest one in order to go against chrononormativity, and we all believe in science. Science has allowed us to make huge inroads, of course, that's undoubtable, and precisely science, the most cutting-edge science, quantum physics, with these two great representatives, Stephen Hawking and Carlo Rovelli, who's more current, they both declare that time does not exist. Time does not exist. So, if we look at the first quote here, we'll just say a few words about Stephen Hawking. We all know about the history of time, from the Big Bang to the black holes. Everyone can look it up. It says in the general relativity theory, space and time are dynamic quantities. When a body moves or a force acts It affects the curve of space and time. And on the other hand, the structure of the space-time affects the way in which bodies move and forces act. Space and time do not just affect, but they're also in turn affected by everything that happens in the universe. So this is the basis of the theory of relativity, which opposes Newton's absolute time idea. So this means that time is not natural, and it's not something that is always there, everywhere, in the same way. Time is affected by other things, and time can change, and at least this can be affected by two basic coordinates. One is velocity, and the other one is gravity. And we have those typical examples. If you have an astronaut that's traveling at the speed of light for 3 years, and then after he comes back to Earth, where his twin brother was waiting for him, has this person aged more? Is he younger than the person who stayed back on Earth? Well, that's what it is. Well, this is a theory of quantum physics that says that the faster you travel, the slower does time move forward, because time is not an absolute value. It's not absolute. It's not just what there is. Time is a factor of speed, and the faster you go, time moves slower. It may be imperceptible, but that's so. So time is not something natural, what there is, and that is just not the dimension we find ourselves in. It's one of the aspects of the dimensions in which we live, and it's affected by velocity and another factor, which is gravity. If somebody's at the top of a mountain, time will go slower for them than the person who's down at sea level due to gravity. So time is impacted by speed and by gravity. Time is not natural. That's what quantum physics, what science tells us, and we all love science, don't we? Carlo Rovelli, which is our second quote here, says, if we go to this and look at the smallest molecules at the size of 10 to the power of minus 13, there we have no time. Time is just something that plays out with the relationship between the smallest molecules. So we enter a world without time. Time is not natural. Time is not natural, but it does move forward, and I have to move forward with my presentation too. So ecology and temporality, Francis Halle, the life of trees. He says that trees do not have the senescence program just as the rest of us have, and potentially a tree itself can be eternal. If you have the right conditions, a tree will never die. That's why we have a 43,000-year-old tree in Tasmania. This is a really interesting book by this biologist. In the field of literature, we've also heard a lot about this question of time. I can recommend the book Einstein's Dreams by Alan Lightman, where in small days he expresses how we can reconsider time from the field of science and literature with a different glance. There's also another important quote in my presentation. I'll send it to you if you like, because I see you're taking pictures of the slides, but I can send the dossier to you, to Marta Ariadna, so that she can circulate it. I also have some photocopies here if any of you are really interested. So it's another very important quote, which is Marcel Proust. I guess you all know this one, In Search of Lost Time, where he speaks about muffins, Prussian muffins. I don't know if you've heard about these, but he talks about the moment which you smell something or you taste something that takes you back to your memories of when you were 5 or 10 years old. You walk into that room and you smell your grandmother's perfume, and it takes you back to being with your grandmother. It's that strength of that memory. So it takes you back to the past as if it were in the present. So it's this involuntary memory of Proust's muffins also questions the linearity of time. If it takes you out of that linearity of time, past and present no longer exist. So for that instant, for a few seconds, there is eternity. You're not a mere mortal. This is the basis of the theory presented in Proust's book In Search of Lost Time. And I will encourage you to go and search for your own muffins. What it may be your grandmother's perfume, it may be the smell of a cocoa power, it may be the smell of your child's nappies. So think of what your own muffin is or your own Madeleine is. Look at that for that smell, and you see it brings you back to a very strong bodily reaction, and at that point in time you are eternal. And just to wind up, there's another very interesting novel for those of you who are interested in topic of feminism, but it's a very hard, cruel book. This is A Woman on the Edge of Time by Marge Pierce. She's a woman who's a victim of aggression. She's her issues, and she has this capacity of connecting with other temporalities. And another book that was very successful is one by Santiago Lorenzo, Los Asquerosos, who shows how you can have a temporary exile and to realize that many of these things that we think are so important are actually not, and they're just time thieves. And just to end up, I'd like to very quickly mention 3 artistic projects. This is modern art. This is very contemporary art, which is very complicated. Sometimes it's not just to create a piece or thing, but creating spaces, different temporalities or different modes of life. This first one here, we have Marie Eckhorn. She said, okay, give me a few weeks for an exhibition at your gallery. That's great, but I'm not going to exhibit anything. I'm going to close it down. And everyone who works there is going to have 5 weeks, 25 days, and 175 hours of free time. This is what Marie Eckhorn did. She closed it. And the first day there was a seminar presented by her to explain the project, and then she gave people 5 weeks off. This is an artistic gesture of emancipation that breaks away with normativity. She does nothing. I'll give you free time. What is more artistic than having free time when you weren't expecting it? And then we have Rax Media Collective. This is a group that works on clocks from different perspectives. It does not involve the quantification of minutes and hours. So as I said at the beginning, I hope to open up your minds to other ways of quantifying things which are not quantifying by hours. So what you do here is in each of the clocks, you indicate how you're feeling, because at 8 o'clock for everyone it's 8 o'clock, and if now we all look at our mobile phones, we all have exactly the same time because we're connected to satellites, which are atomic clocks, and we could talk a lot about those too. But if I tell you that at 8 o'clock in the morning, how are you feeling? What's your mood? And what about at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or at 10 o'clock at night? This would change. We would all have our own clocks, and that is subject to our chronodiversity. We all have our own time there, and it's a way of dehomogenizing clocks. And finally, the project that we work together with Raquel Fiera. She's a creative artist at our Suspended Time Institute, and we work with art and activism. We created our institute precisely in order to institutionalize all these attempts to try to claw back other times, to recover the stolen time, and to institutionalize chronodiversity. So here last year we already had an exhibition, and we will be delighted to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much, and I hope to have opened up your minds to other times in your reflections on life.
Xavier, voldràs deixar aquests llibres a fora ara? Doncs gràcies.
Thank you very much, Xavier, for all these reflections that have really changed a bit our mindset that we came in with this morning. Well, if Xavier agrees, I'll leave these books out here so you can take a look at them during the coffee break. And I'd also like to remind you, an initiative we have, and the Diputación de Barcelona with the municipal libraries. There you have many of these books available that Xavier has mentioned. They're available in our libraries, and therefore I encourage you to read them. Now, please don't get up. We're going to take a very brief 5-minute break to ensure that our next speakers have the microphones, and then we'll continue with our next sessions, which will be Data in Action New Time Use Service for Innovative Policies.